Brilliant. Good morning, everyone. Thank you very much for coming along to today's sort of AI in HR, or the impact of AI on HR session with the super Jeff Wellstead. Very brief sort of note of introduction. I think you all probably know who I am, Jane Middleton, co-founder of Trapeze HR. Jeff is a very experienced global HR professional. I think he commented 35 years plus of wide-ranging experience in FTSE, Fortune 100 businesses, and more recently in sort of high-growth tech and biotech companies who are looking to sort of expand their businesses globally. He has a real passion, excuse me, passion for AI and the sort of the AI revolution, and it was very keen and kind to offer to share that passion and, he said, evangelism with us all today. So yeah, he's combining his HR sort of expertise and his passion for AI in working with clients and friends on this topic. So I will hand over to Jeff. Thank you so much, everyone, for coming along, and Jeff for putting together a super presentation. Over to you.
Yeah, no worries. Thank you very much, Jane. I appreciate that, and I really appreciate the opportunity to kind of have an open conversation with you all about this. Hopefully, we'll have many more as time goes on. Look, I'm just extraordinarily conscious of the fact that HR, our profession, has always ever been dogged by a ridiculous level of regulation and focus and compliance, which oftentimes has then spun us into kind of an administrative pattern of behavior and focus. And I've always ever been fighting as best I possibly can to kind of have a much more strategic angle, because I've always ever wanted to have a positive impact on the businesses I worked with and supported. And it's always been a struggle. It's really been a struggle. But the last I've spent about 20 years over here in the UK, basically focusing and helping, I don't know, as many as like 15 or 16, I'm now on 16 businesses, basically build HR from scratch, but then very quickly also build the strategic layers atop that so that I can kind of contribute to the conversation about where's this company going. This is a really interesting period of time for us. I think this is going to be the breakthrough moment if we embrace it, if we understand it properly. To really kind of like take that mantle finally, and to start driving it forward. But it's a scary time. It's a weird time, to be perfectly honest, because this stuff is all brand new. A lot of us, frankly, didn't kind of grow up in kind of technology. And so this stuff feels a bit foreign, and like you have to have an engineering degree to frankly understand it. And you don't. And this is the best part about it, is you literally can use your natural language to communicate, to these technologies and watch the magic happen in terms of the stuff that then comes back. So that's what we're going to talk about today. It's a bit more of a deeper dive than maybe what you've heard in the past from a lot of other presenters who typically focus on a very kind of high level of just have to figure out how to kind of get it to the next slide. There we go. A very high level kind of focus on AI, very scary, wacky stuff. Look, the robots are coming and things are going to take our jobs away, and the implications are huge, and end of presentation. Sort of left with what exactly? So we're going to go a little deeper because I think it's time to start getting real about this stuff. We have a couple of people in the audience too. Stuart in particular, I know, and Jane has also pointed out to me a couple of other folks that have come along today that can also be super valuable in terms of sharing their insights around this stuff. But here's what we're going to cover today, right? How did we get here? Where are we going? I'm going to share this presentation with you all. It's a link basically to a presentation within a tool called Gamma.app. Write that one down. It's a load of fun to play with. Oh my God, the things it can do just by giving it some relatively simple natural language instructions are phenomenal. Feels a bit like magic. And that's very much what this presentation was produced in. I think this stuff, frankly, is already miles ahead of even PowerPoint. So you get a real flavor for what the power of AI can be in terms of productivity and enhancements. And you'll have fun with it. But let's talk about where AI is impacting HR today, the benefits of using AI, and whether or not it is in fact going to take our jobs, or what are the implications there. and really kind of understand AI too. Like, what actually is this stuff of artificial intelligence and what makes it quote unquote intelligent? Um, let's prepare for a world where there's going to be sort of AI everywhere in HR and arguably across our entire enterprises. We all have in the HR space a role to play in the rolling out of and the engagement and the adoption of AI and all the behaviors around that. Not so much the technical side, but we need to kind of work very close hand in glove with our IT teams to make sure that from a security perspective that we're okay. And as you'll see, there's a bunch of legislation starting to emerge from various governments around the world. And I'm just going to kind of talk broadly about the EU legislation, but not go into great levels of detail. You can look it up and just kind of talk about the core tenets of it. So there's always ever going to be a role that HR has to play in AI, regardless of whether or not we adopt a bunch of it ourselves. It's important to also kind of then talk about the journey potentially we can all take as HR professionals to go from being sort of very compliance and administratively and bureaucratically focused into a world that kind of embraces the notion of the measurement of productivity, the measurement of capability, the measurement of organizational health, often called people analytics. Because what AI can do for us in that space is really unfathomable. I mean, literally imagine every data point in every HR tool you use, plus every finance tool, every CRM tool, every sales tool, any tool in your arsenal at work. Literally, you could scrape all sorts of fascinating data from that and really come up with some fascinating insights. So we need to kind of get skilled up pretty quickly on that stuff. And this is our opportunity. And then, I'll just kind of like cover off the sort of, basic elements in terms of like, what comes next after all this stuff. But the evolution of HR, I think I've kind of just covered a bunch of it off, and I'm going to kind of zip through some of these slides. But look, we're very used to kind of a fairly manual process, and there's the sort of explosion of tech tools, especially for the small to medium-sized enterprises, on up to like about 5,000 employees and less, has been phenomenal. I've really fallen in love with that space. I'm a huge technophile, and I kind of follow the emergence of a lot of these tools that make it. And it's been a lot of fun to watch like the core HCM products, the ATS, the applicant tracking system products, and then importantly, like the real value add products in the back end of these systems around things like building skills matrices and creating really clever infinity loops around the performance assessment cycle, performance skill gaps assessed, attached then to remedies like training or job shadowing or new project work, and then kind of keeping people basically within that infinity loop, always growing, always learning, always kind of shaping their career and giving them some semblance of control. Super important. And there's some really fascinating tools now coming on the market that are kind of helping with exactly that sort of thing. So our future of HR basically, hopefully, will be a good deal more informative, for our exec teams. And we will finally be able to take that place, next to the CEO, in between the CFO, the CRO, the COO, and basically have as much, kind of power and influence as to the direction of a company and the products and where it's going, as those other folks have, because they've had the luxury of data. But they're all looking also in the rearview mirrors, and we want to obviously be much more proactive in that space. So where is HR, kind of interacting today? And what you don't see in these slides, and I'll talk to some of this stuff, but you will see it when you actually access the link. There will be a load of comments down this right-hand side that basically I have input that attach to each one of these sort of little micro paragraphs, okay? And they talk about what tools are actually in place today that are being sold on the market and being adopted by companies where AI is at the core of the particular offering and what basically that tool is doing. And the links are also embedded, so you can just go have some fun and just click into them and kind of find out, what is this thing all about and how does it work? The good news about what we do is that it's very rules-based. The workflows, for the most part, are reasonably universal. And it's really kind of done and managed more or less geography by geography based on the local kind of employment law regimes and regulatory environments as well. But additionally, a lot of the employee handbooks, tend to have a lot of similarity to one another. A lot of our kind of engagements and focus points, functional focus points, tend to be the same. So it's a ripe function for AI engagement, because AI loves a good pattern. AI loves the fact that there is rigor and structure to what it is you're doing, because AI can then go into a system like that and reimagine it, mix it all together, and kind of create a bloom, if you will, of insight off the back of that stuff. So we're actually, as a function, really well positioned to kind of engage with this. A lot of people have heard about, kind of AI in recruitment. It's really flying at this stage. I mean, the fact is that you can literally, and I'm happy to kind of like show you how to do this. You can very quickly whip up, job adverts and job descriptions in almost no time at all by querying the internet. You can do this yourself using, GPT 3.5, the unpaid version. You can use GPT-4, which is like $20 a month. Crazy not to have it. You can use it for free. Google Bard, Anthropic. There's just a load of really brilliant engines out there that you can go and have fun with. And you basically kind of indicate, what it is you want to, what do you want to create? What kind of role do you want to do? In fact, I might be able to, if I can just migrate over to, can I do this? Just migrate to Bard right now as an example. Can you guys now see that I've changed screens and I now have Bard up? Anyone? Jane?
Yes.
Okay, cool, thank you. So if I wanted to, as you are an expert, so you have to kind of tell Bard what it's meant to be in HR or engineering companies. Please help me create a job description, a senior engineer in the UK working on braking systems for the electronic vehicles. I'll just put that in. Let's just see what it comes up with, and just see if Bard can kind of actually scrape the internet and basically come up with some stuff. And this is it basically cogitating on this stuff, and it basically is pulling stuff from a multitude of different sources. It's looking at job descriptions in this space. It's looking at job postings that are out there, and even if it's not hyper accurate, it has certainly taken me very quickly to a place where I can look at this and think, oh, right, God, I didn't even think to include that. That's useful. But yeah, some of these elements aren't necessarily going to be relevant, but I can switch those out because it's reminded me of a couple of other things. And that's sort of the magic of these tools. It's just a very simple thing, but you can also ask it really complex questions too, in terms of, say, performance management. A lot of companies, vendors, are now kind of embracing the use of generative AI in the use of their tools. As managers, we all suffered this. At the end of a year, or even whatever kind of regular interval that we have to catch up with our employees, really struggle to sit down and carve out time to have a qualitative think about all the things our employees have been doing with one another, that our employees have been engaging with in terms of performing against their role, and then coming up with qualitative, useful, practical, kind of advice and information back to them in written form. Who's got time for that? Well, wouldn't it be cool if you actually had a 360-degree performance management tool that is capturing kind of activity in real time, and basically incorporating that into sort of a portal that you as an employee and your line manager are continuously consuming and seeing. But then the AI kind of incorporates all that data and all the prior data and basically puts together a real fascinating dashboard for you to take a look at in terms of your patterns over time, the skills basically that you have developed, the skills, frankly, the skill gaps that you possibly still apparently have, any kind of sentiment in terms of how it is, other employees, your peers, your subordinates, your managers, and so forth, are saying and thinking about you, incorporating all of that, and then giving the line managers some interesting concepts and ideas about themes that are emerging, and coming back with some suggested wording around this. Look, some managers might take that as being a bit lazy and like, great, job done for me, click submit, and I'm done, kind of thing. And that's always a bad idea. Human in the loop, you'll hear that expression quite a lot, is really important. And so, look, this stuff is meant to, in essence, be co-pilots. It's sort of an additional brain, slightly different size and shape to the ones that we were born with, and possibly not nearly as fully functioning as our existing brains. But good God, is it wonderful to have somebody thinking alongside us and saying, hey, boom, here's a straw, man. Take a look at it, and and let's continue to kind of ideate and cogitate further, and let's get to a really good result. So that's happening in performance. Workforce planning, another area that's really complicated and difficult, but how cool would it be if you had a tool that could take a look across the entire span of your commercial enterprise and basically say, well, here are your targets, here's actuals, here's all the finance data, here's all the sales data, here's all the CRM data in terms of the progress marketing and sales are making in terms of landing customers. And here are the people involved. Here are the products that we're developing and all this other kind of stuff. And then basically put that stuff together in sort of a mosaic that's comprehensible, that then says, here's what I found about your company. You seem to be short X number of people with X amount of expertise and capability and skill set in these regions. And I've taken the liberty, this is AI talking, I've taken the liberty to do the math on this. If in fact you're going to go hire people basically to go remediate this on a full-time basis, here's what basically the benchmarking is showing that will likely cost you on average, kind of thing. I mean, that's the kind of level that AI is able to help with in some instances, in a lot of instances. Training and development is another ripe area. Trying to basically create a highly personalized experience where that performance infinity loop is really kind of affecting, is something you want to get right, because it's not ever been done well. It's not been done efficiently in the past. And there's been no connectivity between my job, my role, the job description, all the skills that I bring to the table in terms of that, a recognition from my manager that I have these skills, but I might be lacking some others. And what then the implications of that are in terms of then linking that directly to actual training and learning instances, where I can actually then have a development plan auto-created for myself that I can have as a roadmap, for my own, education going forward, and that we can kind of track over the course of time. That's kind of like, available now in apps. And I'm just about to potentially sign on with a company called Zavvy, ZAVVY.io. Really fascinating in terms of what they focus on. It's exactly what I just described. It's that whole kind of performance infinity loop. So there's a bunch of stuff. Like, you guys have used engagement tools, surveys, and so forth, and there's a lot of really fascinating sentiment analysis that can come off the back of it. Comp and Bens, again, another area that's exploding with AI-based tools, and diversity and inclusion. Again, it's just pattern matching, trying to understand who you have inside, what your recruitment process looks like. It can help you, kind of anonymize, kind of CVs and focus entirely on skills matrices instead, so that you're basically interviewing people on the merit of what it is they know and can bring to the table, first and foremost. Health and wellness. Also, again, these bots that are being created, super fascinating. Have conversations with you day in and day out. How are you feeling? How are things going? What can I help you with? Is there anything that basically is bugging you or in your way? These bots can basically come back with some fascinating insights, again, to spark your imagination. Onboarding and offboarding, additionally, is just, another area that's just right, because it's very workflow oriented, but you can really light it on fire and make it super powerful for new hires coming into your organization or people exiting your organization, and create a very positive experience through the use of these AI tools. So when you get the link, I would definitely tell you, go back into the presentation and have a look at the comments basically that I leave there. Here is where we potentially can kind of like go fast forward a little bit. The benefits of AI and HR are going to be primarily around the efficiencies and the accuracy of things. And I know a lot of you probably heard about these hallucinations that these AI models can create. And it's always ever something to look at because the transformer in the generative pre-trained transformer formula, GPT, can oftentimes, kind of convolute facts, especially if you're really vague about what it is you're asking the chatbot basically to kind of give back to you. It will interpret whatever it is you ask for and try to kind of make sense of it, even if it frankly doesn't quite know what you're on about, and just kind of kick some stuff back to you in hopes that it sparks further thinking and further clarification so it can get smarter for you. So you just watch for that. Always ever review what comes out of AI and to make sure that it's right. But arguably, if it's been baked into a vendor offering, for the most part, a lot of that has been tested and kind of worked through. But again, that's part of the conversation you need to have with the vendor. The insights and analysis. Look, this is the exciting bit, right? Because the level of insight that you potentially could have on the entirety of your workforce that you would share with your exec team, and arguably with the workforce itself to a degree, depending on access rights and everything else, is really phenomenal. And we'll kind of show you some examples of some of the dashboards that you might be able to kind of see. But I mean, if you could imagine every minute of every day having sort of a constant real-time updatable dashboard in terms of the relative health of your organization through the lens of your employees, that's the kind of cool stuff you can have. And there are aspects of it that are still kind of manual in terms of some of the core setup and the integration processes. Those are ever going to get slicker and faster in terms of setting up going forward. So that's that's really going to fly. And let's see if I can get this to, there we go. So look, is AI going to replace us? Yes and no. If we as professionals basically are going to stay lodged in that administrative compliance and bureaucratic state of focus, then that's prime territory for tools and AI capabilities to come in and help lift and shift and fully automate different areas. And then let me give you a quick example. So you're going to see like Josh Bersin and a company called Sana.ai, Sana.ai, launch a new tool called Galileo very, very soon. It will probably be one of the most vocal. There's a load of companies doing this right now, by the way, because it's reasonably easy to build. And they're going to be launching this chatbot, which is going to be trained on a data set, which is the entirety of the Josh Bersin Academy learning and all the articles and all the contributions, all of the training that is offered there. And it's quite extensive. So the bot will come pre-trained with all that information. It will also have the capacity basically to absorb and, as they say, ingest loads of data that you determine that you want to put into it relative to HR things. You could dump your entire employee handbook in there. You can dump every policy change. You can dump, I mean, literally anything that you think would be useful to employees, to managers, to leaders. You can basically put into the system, and you can build access rights and everything else into it. It'll be fully secure. It'll be kind of separated from the internet in this particular instance. Not all of them are. And you'll basically have the capacity to ask that bot pretty much anything. I've got a managerial challenge, right? I've got 3 people in Singapore who are underperforming. And I'm not quite sure how to deal with that. What would be your suggestion? And have it kick back, some fascinating insights in terms of how, as a workflow, how should you basically go about unpacking that problem, and then kind of putting it back together again. And there would be all sorts of referential articles to kind of back that up in terms of evidence, coming from very well-known publications. So these bots are going to be voluminous, and they are going to likely take over, thankfully, a lot of the administrative basic stuff that, frankly, we struggle with in HR every day, and free up a substantial amount of time depending on, how often you have to kind of deal with those kinds of things. And so the question then begs, what are we going to do with ourselves? And so what we need to do with ourselves quite quickly is to hop on the analytics wagon and to really start to kind of understand what tools can give us some powerful insights as to individual performance, managerial capability, the health of particular functions, determining, who are flight risks, matching and mixing that data with performance information. So if we have, for instance, somebody who's a top performer or shows incredible potential and is also a flight risk, that's a danger to the health of the organization. We need to kind of do something about that. Hey, here are some suggestions. Here's what the AI has observed. Let's get the ball rolling on this. This is the kind of stuff that, frankly, we can add value, with relative to the kinds of AI tools that we pick. So if we upskill, if we reskill, and we start to kind of embrace that strategic level of the use of analysis and start building insights that we can action through recommendations, and or at least take to our exec teams and say, look, this is what the data is telling us, right? We're not just saying anecdotally, we think there's a problem. We're telling you there is a problem. And this is exactly where that problem lies. And here's what the challenge is. Oh, by the way, that same problem is occurring in 3 other geographies as well. Possibly we need a program, to kind of completely, go to the root of this and fix it. That's the kind of analysis that our organizations will be looking for, from us. So look, I'm going to have to kind of speed ahead here a little bit, and I'm not going to bore you with all these gory details. Let's talk a little bit about what AI is and what makes it intelligence. Let's talk about sort of the components, here basically. It starts with having mountains of data, right? And typically data that's kind of disparately distributed across the organization through multiple different ERP tools or business intelligence tools. And there's just data everywhere. And the challenge is one of good that we have lots of data, thankfully, because we have that stuff in digital format, we can do things with it. But we now have to integrate it. We have to kind of plug it all in together. So there are multiple different tools coming online, especially people analytics tools, that will do just that. And individuals who can actually help you determine what systems you want to plug into, what ultimately will become a data lake. And that data lake is a place where there will be structured and unstructured data going into it and available to machine learning tools and eventually AI tools that can really kind of interpret what the machine learning patterns determined. The next component of that, so data is super important. And I think the thing I want to mention is data discipline is equally as important. So get together with your CTO, get together with your CIO, get together with your IT organizations and your leadership to say, guys, we need to change our relationship with data input and not allow mediocrity to take over and or, kind of missing and partially, kind of input data. If we don't have this stuff, then we can't make use of tools like machine learning and AI. So that's really going to become a critical focus. Deep learning and neural networks. This is really one of the magical components of this. So now we've got data and we got machine learning basically trying to crunch that data and start to make sense of it. But importantly, we have the capacity now to build into these computer algorithms its ability to learn from its mistakes and to continuously upgrade itself and get smarter over the course of time, depending on the inputs we give it at various times. And that's what's really fascinating. And we're now at a stage where these deep learning neural networks can go on autopilot. And that's what has a lot of people worried and scared, is that computers basically can teach themselves how to be ever more efficient, ever more accurate, ever more focused. And in a way, that's just an incredible leap in capability, and very useful, but also, something to watch out for. Machine learning is the computer programming that basically says, go into this data lake and look through it and look at these different aspects and components and help me make sense of it, right? Find patterns emerging, find trends, find connected information, and very quickly at light speed, help me understand, what it is I'm looking at and what data might be useful versus stuff that frankly isn't particularly useful. Natural language processing is the interface between us and the computer, basically. And that has been something that's been worked on. A lot of these elements have been worked on really since the 50s and 60s. but are now kind of all coming together. Natural language processing basically just simply says, I can just put thoughts, as I shared with you in the Bard thing. I can just put my thoughts and my natural words into a box, and the computer will basically read that, unpack it, make an interpretation around it, go out and find the data, and come back with a coherent response very, very quickly. And it's almost like this notion of low code or no code programming. You basically tell the computer what function you need to create. Like I need a hiring process tracking function, and it goes and builds, with blocks of code, all this information at very, very incredible speeds, and basically gives you that functionality. So that's really fascinating. And then the last bit, which is really kind of the big missing link, really up until the last 10 years, has been computational power. We haven't really amassed, or hadn't amassed, the sizable servers and capable chips, basically, that could kind of go through these reams and reams and reams of data in milliseconds and actually come back with coherent responses. Really until the last 10 years. And now, of course, the last 2 or 3 years, it's just really expanded rapidly. So the computational power, like through Microsoft's Azure or AWS's, kind of offering, or Google's offering in terms of like, huge estates of data, have just exploded. And chip companies, you're going to hear companies like NVIDIA as an example, who create these GPU chips that basically can process like just billions of calculations in milliseconds. It's really fascinating. Those things together are what's creating this AI revolution, and it being then shaped into general use cases like generative AI, suddenly make it available to all of us, and we can all then experience the magic and have some fun with it. So so it's going to be super important to have that. This goes into simply detail around this stuff. Look, this is what I think we need to be doing as a profession. We need to be upskilling our HR teams. Go ahead and get on Coursera or Udemy for Business, or even though there's a load of free material out there, MIT, Stanford, Harvard, obviously the universities over here, Cambridge, I think I saw one. There's a list of courses that will teach you about the basics of AI, and then very quickly kind of get into some of the more specific use cases, like in HR. And then oftentimes they're asking for payment, and it's not a lot of money, right? We're not talking thousands and thousands of pounds here. We're talking, 50, 60 pounds, for some very comprehensive coursework. Also, the Josh Bersin Academy is another super cheap way of exposing your people to just oodles of brilliant thinking and certification courses and knowledge courses. Super important that we kind of embrace this. This is a real critical time for us, because we're going to be pulled into a lot of arguments and debates and questions and issues surrounding the inculcation and the embedding of AI everywhere. And the implications are significant. So we're going to need to kind of engage with that. So make sure that you're collaborating across all your functions. Start to become kind of knowledge managers in this space. Hard to be a thought leader in the space, but certainly a knowledge manager, and connect with each other about your own experiences and share across networks, HR networks, what has worked and what hasn't worked. Because the future roles that we're basically going to be engaging going forward are going to be around things like business analysis, data analysis, and the ability to interpret reasonably complicated returns into actionable, kind of business and compelling business activities around, kind of HR implications. So we may find, for instance, the use of AI in customer care is something that your company is experimenting with, and it's on fire. And people are loving the new bots. And oh my God, this is incredible. They can do 10 times more information. They never get tired. They can work 24/7. We'd never had that capacity before. And it's a hell of a lot cheaper, frankly, than hiring a bunch of people to kind of sit around and learn this stuff and sort it out. So, the exec team has decided, we're going to replace our customer care team. Yeah, good idea, right? We're going to go ahead and put some AI in there. That'll be all sorted. Huge implications. Whoa, people, stop, think. Let's make sure that this is going to work. Let's make sure that there's humans in the loop. Let's make sure that, you know what I mean? There's a lot of implications for this. employee experience designers, again, AI, at least in the tools that I have been witnessing coming online, are phenomenal in terms of the control and the power and the knowledge that they can share with every employee in the organization, as well as the power of insight as people, as employees are kind of engaging with these tools. There's all this metadata that's being gathered in terms of how people are behaving, yes, around the technology, but more around the function that the technology is meant to be addressing, that will give you super powerful insights as to how to basically run the company more efficiently, more effectively. And so that's a space that we need to kind of really get focused on. Employee experience primarily in the technology space, but it's all about personalization. So as an example, as an employee, wouldn't it be amazing to kind of know how it is you're performing on an almost real-time basis, how it is you performed over the course of the past 3 years with this company, and how that's continuing to grow and develop. What your next career move might look like, and might be suggested as being, even outside of your job family. Who would be a good mentor or a person to talk to about your future here? What about a personalized development and learning plan, for you that follows you everywhere, and keeps you plugged in and connects you, to the learning, and sets up a schedule based on your calendar. These are the kinds of things that we basically want to take advantage of, such that ultimately we then sort of take on the mantle of becoming much more like strategic insight consultants to our businesses, and really kind of help them from a people perspective run things more efficiently and faster. But this is basically where we're going as a function. Getting up to speed with data analytics and the concepts around it is going to be super important too, because when we're going to start interpreting data, this is kind of where that whole process starts. And there are some wonderful tools out there that will basically help you stand up a data analytics capability, just like the big companies already have over the course of the past many years, in a matter of weeks. And you can basically outsource the design of it, all the data integration components, the building of dashboards, and insight analysis, and then basically have these very same outsourcers train you to kind of own this in-house and kind of take it forward. I'm working with a company right now that does exactly this in India, and is now kind of breaking out into the US. And it's called stateofmind.ai. A guy named Manoj Kumar has developed this. He was one of the grandfathers of people analytics with HSBC many, many moons ago. And he realized how complicated this is to set up. So he basically said, hey, I'll do a stand-up, done for you capability. And he's also built a web bot that basically can capture sentiment in real time across the entirety of your company. But yeah, really kind of teach you basically how to kind of be analytics professionals, whilst never forgetting the fact that you're ensuring that the best people experience is there and available for you. So what is our problem with this stuff, right? I know I paint a rosy picture around all of this, but the truth of it is that we've got a lot of disconnected and dispersed and inaccurate information in our HR data. So the first job is, again, embracing data discipline. And we really got to go back to people to say, if you don't do this, it's going to harm the business. It's that serious. So it's critical that people get good with this stuff. We suffer right now with things we call analytics, but they're really not. We have lots of like 1 and 2 dimensional reports. Here's a salary readout for the past 3 years. What we need instead is, here's sort of a 3-dimensional model around our salary patterns over the course of the last 3 years across a million different demographic, categories. Here are the ones that stand out as being most concerning. Women get paid on average in this company 25% less than the men do. The relative geographic cost of living increases and things of that nature are widely dispersed now in areas in the United States. And we're seeing these patterns develop now around Austin, Texas, and around Chicago, and around Tampa, Florida, where suddenly it's gotten really expensive to hire people. Just so you know, these kinds of things are what AI potentially should be telling us, so that we can actually take action and be proactive about it. Our inability to integrate new assets. Again, there are people out there that can go do this for you at speed, because a connected company is going to be the winning company. I mean, I'm working with a company right now called Archaeo, basically, which is building a company-wide AI capability. In essence, a huge bot that is going to kind of ingest data from every function in the organization and be able to help steer executive teams in the direction they need to go to A, remediate gaps, B, achieve goals, C, exceed goals, and then D, basically become, ultra competitive in their particular market space. And it's going to become, these kinds of applications will become pervasive. And companies that don't buy these applications and incorporate them often will find themselves not being invested in, not getting the share price and the value that they'd hoped for, because people will be trusting that these other organizations are going to perform better based on the sort of the AI assistance that they're going to have at their fingertips. So this is going to become a thing. And there's a lot of different issues. So I'm very aware of the fact that those things exist. But again, imagine, a situation where you have like these kinds of metrics being kind of captured and delivered to you on an almost real-time basis, and taking that information and then basically kind of, sorry, let's move this down. There we go. And being able to get dashboards that start to give you insights like this, and your ability then to look at any one of these components, as an example, like turnover rate, click on it and actually drill down into root cause challenges in your organization and say, why is it we're having turnover? And then realize, ooh, that's interesting. It's in this particular product group or this particular geography or this particular demographic. And also it's attributed to a couple of managers, that we know have been problematic, but wow, now we've got some real data here and it's costing the company a hell of a lot. So we can't be messing around with that. So as we kind of like drill down into that, if I can get my computer to, sorry, 2 seconds. Technology. There we go. And you can kind of drill down into it and kind of go into the next level, and you start to see some further information, that gives you, again, more insight into, your organization. This becomes then your focal point. This becomes your list of projects and issues to kind of deal with. But importantly, you now need to go back to your exec teams and you need to say to them, hey, this is what the data is telling us. We have some things we need to jump on. Let's go start getting into it. Who's going to argue with that when you have the data in front of you? Well, some people might do, but then that's a different challenge altogether. Yeah, again, just, more drilling, looking at things like your, recruitment conversion rates and, all the different kind of like fascinating insights, all of which give you a very fulsome kind of picture as to what's going on. The ROI use case for this stuff is massive, right? Because you're suddenly able to measure arguably what is often 70 to 80% of the balance sheet from a cost perspective, but also one of the least predictable and possibly most volatile assets you have in the organization, which can be a huge advantage for you if you figure out how to engage them, how to make them more productive, how to make them more motivated, how to provide more discretionary effort, and basically help you innovate, your way to greatness. It's bloody hard work because it requires kind of understanding the current state and the prior state and seeing patterns emerge over the course of time so that you can always ever create the most optimized conditions for winning in this space and really understand what it actually means to win, and then how to kind of help direct resources, people's time and energy and focus in the right direction so that you really can make a difference for your company. So that's basically, kind of what we're kind of like needing to do going forward. Look, legislation is also going to be popping up left, right, and center. So the U.S. is the most recent government basically to come up with a very, very hefty set of regulations around AI. Having said that, it still doesn't stop or fix things. It just basically lays down the law to say, here are the guardrails, and here's basically what is acceptable and what is not, and here's what everybody's responsibility is at every stage in the use of AI in terms of auditing to make sure it's fair, that it's balanced, that it's not biased, that it's not doing bad things, and importantly, that it's working within the parameters that you have agreed with your users that you would do. And again, not a surprise. A lot of the stuff is based on a lot of the GDPR stuff that's already out there. They're basically trying to kind of legislate for transparency and privacy, autonomy and control, and making sure your algorithms are visible and comprehensive and understandable so that it doesn't create unfairness, bias, false information, and so on and so forth. That's a tricky one because not everybody understands how this works. Where does it intersect with HR? A couple of places, actually, a couple of high-risk areas around things like recruitment and worker management. That covers a lot of territory, like everything. Education and vocational training, that includes training and development. Issues around mitigating, kind of bias and making sure that you've got representative training data, which is to say that the data that you're giving your AI tools is as accurate as you possibly can make it and has been scraped and looked at to make sure that it's not going to have bias in the system accidentally. Plenty of use cases early on in terms of like companies like Google and Facebook that used early stage AI tools. The data was trained on who are the best people in the organization, the highest performers with the highest potential, and maybe even linked it to pay. And guess what? The computer basically found that the majority of those individuals were males in their mid-30s, basically who had whatever characteristics. And that's what the model trained itself on. So when it went to market to look for candidates, it just found more males. It basically cloned the existing population. And they didn't discover it for months and months and months until they realized we got a problem here. Like, where are the women? Where are the diversity candidates? Where, what is going on? How come all that's been eliminated? Because we keep ending up with the same old folks over and over again. Well, that's what the data was trained on, so that's what you're going to get. So that's the kind of stuff you got to keep an eye on. So that means human oversight, explainability, auditable logs, and human in the loop, reviews are going to become and are a thing, certainly in the EU at this stage. Look, the penalties are also quite fierce, but don't panic about that because this stuff is so loosely written. It's really going to have to be tested over and over again in European courts to kind of make up, to kind of understand, what degree of accountability do people have. But if you're found guilty of obviously misuse of AI, you're talking about, potentially a penalty of 7% of your global turnover, up to 35 million euros. And that's not something obviously you want to have happen. So it's going to be important that you stay close to the developments in the space. It's all over the place. LinkedIn is a great resource for a lot of this stuff. But again, there are going to be a lot of government sites that will also kind of go into it as well. So conclusions and key takeaways here, guys. Always be learning, absorb this stuff, get yourself plugged into a bunch of LinkedIn, kind of articles and posts and things of that nature. Their algorithm will then start to feed you more and more and more data around AI and HR. And there's just loads. I think I've saved something like 250, kind of really brilliant posts and articles off LinkedIn just in the past couple of months. And it's been super helpful, but it's everywhere. Get yourself a subscription to GPT-4 and GPT-5, I think, is going to be coming out later this year. And it will be exponentially smarter and better than GPT-4, if you can imagine, and include all sorts of different modes in terms of like video and audio and visual activity and its ability to just morph all of that stuff simultaneously. It's going to blow your mind. But engage with these things, have fun with them. It's actually a blast. I mean, have it write poetry, rap tunes, letters, to people. I mean, I can't tell you how many use cases I've kind of experimented with, but you really get smarter and smarter about how to engineer, how to kind of develop the prompts to get much more out of the AI tools. And you can also continue conversations and say, well, that wasn't quite what I was looking for. Can you give me this instead? And it will do it. It will go off and give it back to you. It really is pretty mind-boggling stuff. But engage with other people too in the field who really kind of have been doing lots of thinking about what I call HR 3.0 looks like. And let's run yourself an assessment, have a good honest look in the mirror and say, how prepared are we for this? Even if you're not prepared at all, don't be embarrassed by it. Everybody's in the same boat. So we all have to just catch up on it. Embrace these bots. They're really quite fascinating. It will just lift and shift a whole bunch of stuff away from you, which is really brilliant. And make sure you then kind of work with someone to help build out what your roadmap will look like over the course of the next, 1-2 years. Things change fast almost every day in this space. And so it's important that basically you get on a pathway that says, we're going to get on top of this wave as opposed to wait for it on the beach and get wiped out by it instead. And that's basically the pathway for doing it. So look, as I just mentioned, I mean, learning about this stuff is like taking, 150 years and slamming it into 10. It's been that mind-boggling, and it's only going to get that much more exciting in that space. So embrace it, engage with it, have fun with it, and let's move and ask some questions if we can.
Thank you, Jeff. Fab.
No worries.
I saw a couple of quick questions. Bard, does it always produce American spelling? And does it cover international jurisdictions, do you know, was a question I saw pop up when we first talked about Bard. I guess
it not only covers international spelling, it will actually figure out spelling mistakes. So basically what all of these large language models are basically predictive engines. So they basically have seen every possible combination of words put together. And depending on the context that in terms of the instruction you've given it, it will basically kind of figure out that syntax and basically, kind of sort out how to work it. So it will blow through misspellings. It will blow through multiple languages. I would challenge you to find a language it doesn't know. Okay. It will do all of that kind of stuff. It's really pretty mind-boggling. So yeah.
cool. Does someone have a question in the short time we have left? I appreciate some people might need to finish at 12, some can stay on, but please unmute yourself and ask away if you wanted to comment or share. I will kick things off by thanking Jeff for a deep dive and loads of content, which will be shared out to everyone. I'll also share Jeff's link to the presentation and his own contact details if you want to take this offline.
I've got one to ask.
Oh.
Jeff, that was very, very useful and very interesting. One question, when you were looking at using the likes of Bard to create job descriptions and to kind of give some technical help, how good is it at knowing the various labour legislations around the globe? Would you still need to have good localized knowledge to be able to make sure that what it's churning out? So I know ChatGPT, unless you pay for the upgraded one, has a much smaller framework that is slightly restricted. What's Bard like?
Bard is awesome, right? And the reason why I use Bard is because it is current, right? And it's Google's invention. So it knows everything Google knows, which is everything on the internet. And it's not, like I said, it's not always perfect, but here's an example in terms of exactly that. I created on the paid version of GPT, the $20 US dollars a month version. You can actually go build your own bot. You can build your own GPT. And I did for fun. And it's awesome. It walks you through every step and says, well, how do you want it to look? And how do you want it to feel? And do you want to call it this? And what information do you want in it? What do you want me not to talk about? This kind of a thing. And you just go through, it's like a setup wizard, basically. And you, in your own words, kind of tell it what you want to know. And I did that. And I created a bot basically for HR professionals to operate in any geography around the world and do exactly as you just asked. Give me the local legislation on terminations for cause in Germany. And basically, what should I follow? And it was like, boom, back, here you go. Everything you need to worry about. By the way, here's all the reference information if you need to, do a further deep dive. And it was like just mind-boggling. So yes, it can give you all that. Anything that is publicly published in terms of information and so forth is available to Bard, to ChatGPT 4.0 as of April of last year. But again, GPT-5 will probably be now real time going forward. So that will just blow everything else out of the water. This is what keeps happening too, by the way, is that these big tech companies are coming out with newer and better configurations around their GPTs. So Google just announced this whole kind of line called Gemini that has 3 different tiers of capability. They're saying that it's actually better than GPT-4 already, but then they're going to get swallowed up by GPT-5 when that comes out. So these companies are just constantly laddering up capability, but it's all now going to be real time. So yeah, and it'll find anything that's published.
Super, thank you, Jeff.
No worries.
Anyone else for a question, comment, share, song on the guitar?
Visa.
No.
Hi.
Oh.
Oh,
Oh,
sorry.
sorry.
Go on.
It was just it was more of a comment just to say, if people out there haven't used any of the AI tools, try it. It's so good on so many levels, not just for work. If you're interacting with friends, if they need some help on something, if you've got kids. I've used it for so many different things. I've used it for work. I used it last week. I've got a 10-year-old daughter. For her homework, she had to do a short paragraph on which came first, the chicken or the egg. She came to me and she said, I want to say the egg, but I don't know my reasons why. And we just used Chat GPT 3.5. She was really nervous because she said to me, oh, it's cheating. And I said to her, well, it's not cheating because you're going to find this information online anyway. So what's the difference? And you will reference the fact that you've used this tool. And so she just typed in, and it's getting her to use her typing skills as well. I am in year 5 at a school in the UK. My homework is, I need to say 3 reasons. Please write me a short paragraph. And it did. And the first time she read it through and she said, oh, I don't really like it. It doesn't really sound how I would sound. And so I showed her that there's a rewrite tool, and then it rewrote it again and she changed the ordering. Brilliant for that. Had a friend who needs to get out of a finance agreement. She said to me, will you help me? I said, yes, I will help you, but try this. And she'd never heard of it. So if you haven't had a chance, I've used it for various different things at work, like for job descriptions. It's the first time I've seen Gamma, so I'm really excited to use that. But it will genuinely change your life, because you'll just be like, oh my God, I can't believe all these tools are there. It is quite interesting when it kicks out strange things. So I saw something that said, it was on an article, but it was something like, I have 10 apples, I ate 4, I gave 2 away. How many do I have left? And I think it said 6. And it didn't register the fact that, or maybe it said 8, and it didn't register the fact that eating means that they're no longer in existence. So, there are some weird anomalies that it comes out with, but the best advice that was given to me and that I would share with everyone is, when you read through it, it's so interactive and it feels so real. Just remind yourself this is a computer. Just remind yourself that this isn't a person, and be cautious about what you're putting into it, because obviously any personal data or any data points about your company, it then holds and then can reuse.
Yeah, that's an excellent point, Hafiza. Yeah, and by the way, just a quick note about security around that. Of course, there's a lot of apps now, and the apps that you would buy from an HR perspective would have this capability as well. You can create an API key that basically kind of like ring fences all the information that you share on a particular app internally to your particular license. And so, there are ways basically to kind of lock down, the sharing of information. But excellent point you make about, look, do be careful about sharing like loads of like super private information out there, because it does kind of then get ingested into the big giant large language model, and you don't necessarily need people reading about that. Very famous situation happened at Samsung when all this stuff kind of came real. 4 engineers who were responsible for the core software and intellectual property of Samsung all decided separately to kind of go out and use ChatGPT to help them rewrite code and debug the code that they had. And they didn't do it with an AI in place. And they literally launched like Samsung's entire IP catalog out to the large language model, tried to retrieve it, and were told in no uncertain terms, it's too late, mate. It's like a drop in the ocean. It's just poof, just out there. So yeah, that's kind of how it can happen. So good to be careful.
Thank you, Hafiza. Stuart, did you want to add a comment?
I was actually going to say quite a similar thing, I suppose, just to encourage people to have a go. Certainly from my experience, starting with a list of my own pain points was really useful, and then just thinking from that, how can AI potentially help me solve this? So how can it help, rather than how it can definitively here's a pain point, I have no idea, AI has to do the whole thing, but just getting used to using some of the tools or thinking of AI as something that's there to help augment sort of human work rather than sort of take jobs and that sort of thing can be really useful. The second point that I was going to make is from an HR standpoint, I think we're going to be involved as AI continues to grow within businesses, not just in AI in the HR function, but more broadly as well, and around the sort of change management piece, around upskilling, of course. And I think one thing that we did in my most recent business was we thought about, okay, we want to be using AI more. Who are the influencers within the organization, and how can we use AI to help them win their day? And so by doing that, again, on a sort of low-hanging fruit basis, we're then getting buy-in in terms of the broader HR piece, the broader AI piece as well. So I'd recommend having a think about that as well. Who can help influence across the organization to build momentum behind that change and make sort of our lives easier later on.
It's an excellent point. It's an excellent point you make. You're absolutely right. Real quick, guys, I just want to let you know, in the chat, I've just left you a link to a question I just asked Bard, which is, how do you create a super useful and effective prompt? And it basically just gave me a brilliant list of the things that you want to kind of include in the instructions that you give your GPT model or large language model, and you'll likely get a really brilliant result as a result. So, and again, by the way, also LinkedIn Learning, for those of you who are on it, has loads of wonderful coursework, a lot of it free, available to you. So don't hesitate to use that as well. If you have any questions, just reach out to people like Stuart, myself. We're here to help. And that's it, really.
Thank you so much. I will drop the links that have been shared into a note that, if you're all comfortable, I'll just circulate. I mean, you'll all see each other's email addresses, and I'll put Jeff's, do connect with Jeff on LinkedIn or on email and keep the conversation going. It's great to be hearing about the positives rather than what I think we felt we heard a lot of last year around the fear factor, whether that's probably because I work in the recruitment space and some of the recruiters out there feel their jobs are going to be devoured by bots. But we're determined that the human factor will always prevail, and we will use AI to enable and augment the work we do to just make us smarter, and to play with it and try it. And it's a cool tool. Thank you so much, everyone, for coming along and sharing. And I'll ping the recording through so you can reflect and go back to this. But thank you most of all to Jeff. Really appreciate your time.
My pleasure.
Thanks for coming.
Thank you. Appreciate it,
Thank you
guys.
all.
Take care.
Thank you.
Cheers.
Bye-bye.
Bye. 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 Bye.